Windsurf and Cursor are the top two contenders in the AI coding space for IDEs. Which one is the best for your specific situation? What are the major differences between the two of these? These are not exactly the same. Which one supports the best vibe coding experience? So if you want to up your AI coding game, I've spent time working with both of these IDEs for a while, and I'm going to help you answer all of these questions and more in this video. At the end of this video, you should know which one is best for you and have most of the key questions answered. So we'll start with the pricing. It looks very similar on the surface. You have $0 for a free, there's like a free trial, and you have $15 per month and $60 per month on Windsurf, and then you have free $20 per month and $40 per month for Cursor. But there's a very big key difference here that can make a substantial difference in your experience with the two, and depending on how much you want to use this. This one has unlimited completions, $20 per month, and $500 per month fast completion. So an unlimited slow premium request. So basically you can do everything with this one. I don't really even see, unless you're going to, push this across your business, you probably don't need anything more than the Pro. While with the Windsurf, they have a credits-based system, and you get 500 model user prompt credits. So this is like for every prompt. And then you get 1,500 flow action credits. Now, if you do upgrade to $60 per month, you get infinite premium model prompt requests, but you only get double premium model action flow requests. This is kind of confusing as to what this is, so I'm going to show you what it says in their documentation. I'll put a link below on what the usage is, and then we're going to run a test real quick to see how many credits are actually used with a few inputs. So when you dig a little deeper, every prompt just is every message you send. So that's pretty simple, which incentivizes you to write longer prompts, which potentially is a downside to actually using these, unless you go up to the $60 per month plan, which this won't matter. The flow action credits will matter at every plan, and it does seem pretty limited. You have to actually buy extra if you use these all up. And the way this works, it seems like, okay, so when it has to search through your code base for snippets, well, isn't that every single time? So my guess, and based upon my research, is that a lot of the flow action credits will be used with every prompt. I haven't run this specific test before. When I used Windsurf before, they hadn't changed their pricing yet. And so they did make some improvements. I stopped using Windsurf. There were some weird bugs in it, and that's why I stopped using it and went back to Cursor. But I have used Windsurf to a good extent, but not since they changed this pricing. So we're going to test this pricing out. To me, it seems like it's going to use these very frequently, and this is going to be a huge bottleneck, and with very few actual prompts, you're going to eat up your credits really quickly, even on the high plan. So let's check it out. So what we've got here is the starting instructions. I'm actually going to cut this up and make this simpler, cut out some of these instructions, and then put it in a second prompt to see if that maybe charges more credits with the search-based tools, which to me it seems like that's just should be standard, so it's a little bit strange to me. And you can see I've just, on a new email, I've started a new account, and you can see 0 out of 50 prompt on the free trial credits used, and 0 of the 200 credits. So we'll check up on this after the first and the second time we test it. Okay, so we've taken out 2 of the requirements to make this a bit simpler for the first one, and we're going to select Sonnet, because sometimes with this, if you look here, there may be subject to rate limits. This is a Google thing. This does happen in Cursor sometimes, but really only with the thinking version. And for this test, I don't want to have to restart it because I think it'll mess up the data. So we'll do 3.7 Sonnet because it should be just about as good as Google, even though I think Google is a little bit better. And we'll hit go. Okay, that took about 2 minutes. Everything has been done. So what it did here is it created a README, a setup, an index, a style, and then a JavaScript. So first, let's check up on our credits. So it used 1 prompt credit and 5 flow action credits, which is pretty interesting. Let's actually see how well it worked. All right, here we go. So it is, and actually I think it created, so it's actually working pretty well. This is nice, and if we let it go, game over, it gave me a score. All right, so the code worked. It built the game perfectly, basically right out of the gate. And it's a pretty standard game, I think, with very simple rules, so that's not too surprising. Okay, it already took up one of my extra starting instructions that I took out. It just did it naturally. Claude tends to kind of take a little bit of authority on that front. So we're going to try to add 2 more features, and we're going to see what it does to our credits. Okay, so it ran a terminal command, which I think we will be charged for. It edited the script. It created a different README inside the sounds file, which actually didn't download these. I'll show you what it did in a second. Then it created this clever little thing where these popped up where I clicked this button and I played it and then I downloaded it and then I just had to move it to the right directory. So that was interesting. Let's see what kind of credits we used here. So we used 1 more prompt credit, which is what we expected, and then 4 flow action credits. I believe that each one of these right here, so 1 credit's used there, 1 credit. So each time it edits a file or creates anything at all, it uses an action credit. So we have 5 up here. So this could get very expensive, and 3,000 at the top tier plan. I don't think that goes very far. Let's say you use 5 credits per prompt. That's only about 600 prompts per month, which is not a lot. And it makes you, and you can't even work your way around it by being more clever with your prompts or by putting in longer prompts like you can with the prompt limit. This is a pretty big wall that I think could get very expensive very quickly if you're using all of this a lot. Now, it might be worth it. So let's dig into some of the other pros and cons of using these, because ultimately, if you're a software developer, that time is incredibly valuable, and if you can move faster and do things better, because there are things that are better about Windsurf. Okay, so there is a difference between the models and so that are available. So you see here, you do have, so these are all in Cursor. Cursor has the thinking version of this. Currently, Windsurf does not for Gemini 2.5 Pro. Cursor doesn't have the DeepSeek models or O3 Mini. Can't remember, we'll check in a second if it has Gemini 2.0 Flash. So let's open that up and we'll go here. So you can do thinking or non-thinking. I don't like that. It defaults to auto select when I reopen it, because I guess they want us to use the cheaper models. They also have this max thing that costs extra, which is really interesting because it does not talk about that at all on their pricing, but that's a very, very new thing. So hopefully they'll update their pricing to match, to account for that soon. Basically, with the max level, you can get the full context windows. Otherwise, they limit it to 120,000 tokens, and there's people out there who suggest that actually this is like their maximum, that sometimes they'll limit it to quite a bit less. But so it does not have O3 Mini, and there is their proprietary model, but there's no reason to use that. Well, with Windsurf, if you noticed, if you use the code base, this does not actually use any credits. So they don't have Gemini 2.0 Flash, but I don't know any reason why you'd want to use that in Cursor. So the one thing missing here are the DeepSeek models and O3 Mini. Let's check out the benchmarks for those. So if we go to LM Arena and we filter by coding, this one is, I think they were cheating. I'm very suspicious that ChatGPT 4o is better than Gemini and a lot of these other models. So I don't really trust this. I mean, this is not a perfect benchmark, but you know, O3 Mini high is way down here, O1 is way down here, and then Sonnet is all the way down here. Again, I question whether or not Sonnet is worse than all of these, so I'm not a super big fan of that benchmark. If we look at the SWE bench, which all these benchmarks have their issues, it shows Claude 3.7, Sonnet, we'll just do the 62.3%, you have 3.5. I mean, that was basically the main difference between 3.5 and 3.7. No reason to use 3.5 when the same amount of credits in Windsurf and Cursor. And then the O1, O3, and DeepSeek R1 are right neck and neck. And if we come into Google's benchmarks, 63.8%. So the fact that they both put Google Gemini 2.5 Pro in there pretty quickly, props to them for that, because that, I think, currently is the best model for coding. And that's not based upon the benchmarks, that's based upon my actual testing and my team's actual testing of it. And I think 3.7 Sonnet is the next best. Thinking sometimes helps. I haven't found that it is necessary in a lot of cases, and it tends to take longer. And that is where I found in Cursor where I do get the rate limits. So sometimes when I'm using, if I try to use the thinking version of Gemini, sometimes it just kind of stops. And I switch it away from thinking, and I hit and I tell it to continue, and it goes. And Gemini is also really fast, so I really like that. In general, other than not having the Gemini Pro thinking, which I expect that they'll have very soon, the two main models that I'd want to use, which is Sonnet 3.7 and Gemini 2.5 Pro, are in both of these. I don't think it's a big difference between the two. Now, when we show the context windows, this is actually pretty important, and it's unclear exactly how Windsurf does it, but supposedly, based upon what I've heard a lot of people say in my own research, they kind of vectorize the code, and so it's not so simple as tokens total code looked at, because they sometimes they might comb over code and not put it into the context window. But I do think that they're using their process for doing the context window is generally better. And so it is generally better at referring to previous code, and I think you'll get a little bit less bugs with Windsurf. So they both do MCP servers. You do have to go to the Cursor settings to set up your MCP servers, while they had it right here. I guess if we do a new one, you can see they have the MCP servers a little bit more front and center in Windsurf, but for both of them you can do it. They both have global rules, so you can tell it how you want it to act in certain situations. That's good. They both can allow you to do web. So I use this a lot, especially when it's like, hey, I want you to do this API. Here's a link to the API documentation, or even like the sub page within there that is specific to the features that I want. That tends to dramatically increase the effectiveness of the code that I get out. Once I started doing that, I rarely got API errors. And before, even when I was trying to copy and paste it into like a .md file or some sort of resource for it to comb through, it didn't work nearly as reliably as with web. Probably the biggest difference in terms of workflow that I really don't like about Cursor is having to tag all the files over and over again. So if I'm in the middle of a conversation here and I want to give it some resource files because I want it to reference multiple files, I have to continue to tag it over and over again with each message, so it won't continue with the above ones. Now there is a little bit of an exception to this. Sometimes it does seem like if I forget to tag it, it still goes and finds that file, or sometimes actually it does the reverse where I tag a bunch of files and I tell it edit these files, use these files, and it ignores some of the files in there. So that's been my experience with the Cursor tagging. That's pretty annoying, and it's just kind of like extra work when Windsurf is supposed to have your code base indexed, and I don't have to tell it which files to go to, which is a huge time saver and just a very superior experience. And I think it has to do with how they process the code itself, and they actually kind of break it down and vectorize it and stuff like that. So let's recap the significant differences. From a model standpoint, there's not much difference. So they have all the models. The pricing is very different, even though it seems very similar on the surface. I don't think getting Windsurf is good if you're really on a tight budget and you want to use this a lot. If you want to do a lot of coding with it, then I think you're going to run out of credits pretty quickly. And this is pretty expensive, $10, and it might actually be this might actually be a better deal, because if we're using 4 to 5 premium action model credits, we're going to run out pretty quickly, and we only get double for 4x the price. It's super weird the way their pricing is structured, but they're built to actually make money and be sustainable, while Cursor is almost certainly losing money and dumping money down there to get users. But I think that if you can afford Windsurf, it probably is the better experience overall, because the lack of having to tag things is non-trivial and ends up being very significant. And generally the way it handles referring to other code is superior in my experience. So I think if you make a bunch of money, you're a coder, or you're somebody who's looking to hire, you have coders that work for you, and you want them to, you have like a badass who you really want to like make a lot of code, then you just eat this. You eat the price. And I mean, I think you could probably go through 400 of these credits. That's 80 submissions. You could do that in a couple of days. This could get very expensive. But is it more expensive than a really awesome programmer, even if this ends up costing you $300 a month, versus somebody using Cursor and having more bugs and just spending less time? I think that Windsurf might be worth it. I do wonder if since this pricing is pretty new, if they'll kind of figure this out a little bit better, because I think that this should be much greater to match the 4x increase. This should be at least 4x this. You should get at least, what, 6,000 action model flow credits, because for $60 a month, that's not that much, to be honest, of a difference. Again, and like, I think you could blow those if you're coding over a long weekend and you're, you know, having a hack session. I think you could probably blow through all of your premium model flow credits and eat pretty quickly. For me, I'm actually going to switch back to Windsurf for a month now, because I did use it before, and then I switched to Cursor because Windsurf, again, had these really weird bugs. I contacted support, no response. It was really weird, and then now it seems like the bug that I was dealing with has been fixed, and I'd like to be able to move faster. And I'm super annoyed with Cursor and having to tag things constantly, and how it kind of, even when I tag things, sometimes it doesn't do that, so it's a huge pain in the butt, and having to fix bugs stinks. And so I'm going to go with Windsurf for right now. And I really, you know, a lot of people talk about how, you know, the benchmarks with the thinking is so valuable, but I personally haven't seen like a huge difference when I do thinking versus non-thinking. In fact, the thinking just is slower in a lot of cases, but I haven't felt like the code coming out of there is any better. So I'm going to use Windsurf. I'm going to use Gemini 2.5 Pro until it gives me like a rate limit, and then I'll switch over to Claude 3.7, and I'll go from there. And I'm going to be really testing to see how far those action flow credits go. And, you know, if I hit the limit, maybe what I'll do is I'll switch over to Cursor, or I'll use both at the same time. To, like, the Cursor might be for more testing or continuing things, or maybe the first versions of things, and as the code base gets a little bit deeper, switch over to Windsurf. Or the first try is in Cursor, and if it works really well, then I can move over to Windsurf. I think there's maybe a combination here. Just, it sounds kind of strange, but due to the structure of the pricing of Windsurf, if it just gets too expensive, I can always switch back over to Cursor. So what have you seen in the differences? Have you tried Windsurf? Have you tried both of the and Cursor? What do you like about each one? What do you not like? Is there something I'm missing here? Please let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to discuss that with you. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day. Bye.